Little killers to start off the show. Welcome back to WSYC 88.7 FM. I'm JD Dorazio. I'll be with you for the next 40 or so minutes on the designated speaker. Another week of sports has come and went, and we have a lot to talk about. If you're joining us on the YouTube, welcome. Happy to have you. And as you can see, I'm decked out in the Eagles gear. Uncle Mike, if you're listening, appreciate the new swag. I just turned 21 over the weekend, so I had an absolute great time watching the Birds. Not such a great time watching the Phillies. We'll talk about it all, but just happy to have you with me. Appreciate you tuning in, whether it's on YouTube, if you're listening on the radio. Happy to have you here. Excited to talk some sports. So let's talk about those Birds because a little bit of a shorter show today. We got a big game for the Phillies trying to clinch a division title against the Chicago Cubs at Citizens Bank Park tonight. So that's got my attention. So I'm going to cut the show a little bit short. So I just want to get right into things because I want to talk about right away what went down on Sunday when the Eagles took on the New Orleans Saints. Ultimately, they got the job done. And that's the first thing we got to talk about. They managed to get a win in what was a really good Saints team the first 2 weeks. They put up 40-plus points against the Panthers, and they put up 40-plus points against the Cowboys. And they go into a showdown with the Eagles saying, are the Saints actually somebody, or are they just pretenders? And I don't know if it's true they call them pretenders, but they certainly did not look like the same team they were in the first 2 weeks against the Philadelphia Eagles. But I'm not necessarily very happy about the Eagles' win either. There was lots of good, there were lots of bad, there was some ugly. This was a really, really weird football game from start to finish. Obviously, 15-12, a rather low-scoring affair in terms of a football contest. But let's start the show on a high note. Let's talk about what went well. And instead of me telling you, I think it's just better if we listen to a little clip that does all the talking, in my opinion. 65-yard touchdown run for Saquon Barkley in the third quarter to kickstart the Eagles offense. That's my first big positive from this game. Saquon Barkley, a little revenge game. Obviously, last week against the Falcons, had that huge drop that partially costed the Eagles a game. I think the defense collapse in the following drive is also a big part to blame. But Saquon Barkley took the loss on the chin, said if I catch that ball, we win the game, which is true. So he comes out against the Saints and just absolutely dominates them. I'm going to pull up the box score here just so I list off these stats properly. I mean, these are video game numbers. 17 carries for 147 yards and 2 touchdowns just on the ground. Through the air, well, actually, didn't really get that involved in the air. He had 4 catches through 9 yards through the air. But the rushing, 17 carries for 147 yards and 2 touchdowns. Ever since Saquon Barkley became a Philadelphia Eagle, and I'm rocking the jersey. I'm rocking the 2-6 right now if you're watching on the YouTube. Ever since Saquon Barkley has come to the Eagles, all he's done is be exactly what the Eagles need him to be, and that is a superstar running back who can ground and pound as a power back, who also can be explosive and break off a few big runs each game. And for some reason, the first half, Nick Sirianni, and I guess it was more Kellen Moore, actually, because Kellen Moore is calling the plays. Kellen Moore just chose not to get Saquon Barkley involved. Was barely utilized in the first half. I don't know the exact numbers, but I know they were talking about during the broadcast. Very minimal rushing yards in the first half. But then the second half, I mean, they just fed that man, and he propelled the Eagles to victory. I was super impressed with what I've seen out of Saquon Barkley, and I'm just hoping that they can keep that man healthy. They need to keep Saquon healthy. I know he's not having an insane workload. 17 touches, that's not too bad for a workhorse back. But they got to keep him healthy. They're paying big money to him, but I'll tell you what, if he keeps playing like this, he's showing what his career could have been all along with the Giants. I mean, it's a shame for his youngest prime years because a running back is pretty much in their prime in college and their first years in the NFL, just because running backs, you take so many hits. The wear and tear on running backs, they rarely last long in the league. To have a career length like McCaffrey or Saquon, it's very hard to do. Like Frank Gore's another guy that comes to mind who just had a super long career as a running back. It's very hard to do. just because of the amount of hits you get. But to remain that explosive as the guys like Saquon Barkley and McCaffrey, who both have their fair share of injuries, of course, but to still be as explosive as they are this late into their careers is very impressive. It's very impressive. But it does yield some concerns just with Barkley's injury history because they need him on the field now more than ever. We'll talk about here in a couple of minutes, a little bit later into the show actually, of how many injuries the Eagles suffered against the Saints, most notably Devontae Smith, who's in concussion protocol. Some big losses, so they need Saquon Barkley out on the field. But I'll tell you what, he's a bad man. He has done nothing but performed. But I don't think he was the star of the game. In fact, I don't think there was a certain player who was the star of this game. The star of the game was undoubtedly the entire Philadelphia Eagles defense. A defense that was being questioned in the media on if they are as good as people thought they were. And I'll tell you what, they looked darn good against the Saints. They looked really, really good against the Saints. A Saints team who, just to remind you, I know I said at the top of the show, put up 40-plus points against the Panthers, put up 40-plus points against the Cowboys. Now, obviously, the Cowboys' defense is a big question mark. Their defense is struggling, so maybe that performance against the Cowboys' defense is super impressive. But I'll tell you what, 40 points is still 40 points in the National Football League. 40 points is very hard to do in back-to-back weeks. And then the Eagles hold them to 12 points. I mean, looking at the box score, Derek Carr, 14-25 for 142 yards. 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Only had 89 yards rushing as a team. Kamara, most notably, 26 carries for 87 rushing yards. You'll take that. That's a win. Like the opposition rushed for 89 yards. That's great. Especially with how good Kamara's looked in the first few weeks. First 2 weeks, I guess it would be. He looked really good, and the Eagles limited him. The pass rush was finally alive, but I'll tell you what, I really expected Bryce Huff to be special. And he still can. Howie Roseman obviously saw something in him, hence why they traded Hassan Reddick for Bryce Huff. And not only that, they extended Bryce Huff with a 3-year, $51.1 million extension. But the bro has been nowhere. I mean, Vic Fangio is an old school guy. He's not going to he's not going to play somebody just because they're getting a bag. And he said that. He said he needs to see more out of him, and I respect that style of coaching. You put out the best 11 players, whether they're making vets minimum, whether they're the highest paid player in the league, I don't care. You put out the best 11 players. That is not your job to play people based on what Howie Roseman and company are paying people. So I like, if Bryce Huff's not performing, don't play him. But he needs to get going because we know the talent's there. We saw it on the Jets last year. I don't know if it's just the new scheme under Fangio. I'm not sure what the problem is, but Bryce Huff needs to get his act together, and I think he will. He's just too talented. He's too talented to at least not see the field, and I think he will turn it around. But Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, I mean, that's a deadly combo. Nakobe Dean looked good. Zach Bond has come out of nowhere. Bro's made nothing but made plays. C.J. Gardner-Johnson's been a little disappointed to start the year, but I'll tell you what, he's a leader in the locker room. The team rallies around him. And he's had his moments. And again, the season's still very young. And then, of course, it go without saying, Reed Blankenship with the huge interception on Derek Carr to seal the deal. And I was really nervous when the Eagles scored that touchdown with, I think it was like a minute and a half left to go or something along those lines. I can try to pull up the exact time that was left. Yeah, it was a minute left. A minute 01 left. I'm looking at the ESPN box score. I was so nervous because I was getting flashbacks to the Monday Night Football game when the Falcons had the ball and drove down the field. I was like, oh my goodness, the defense has played this masterclass of a game, and they're going to throw it away again on the final drive in back-to-back weeks. But no, Reed Blankenship, my man, came through with a huge interception to seal the deal for the Philadelphia Eagles. So that's the good. That's the good. All that stuff I said was great, lovely, loved it from the birds. Let's replicate that week in and week out. Now we get into the bad. And in typical armchair armchair quarterback or just a pure Philadelphia fan action, there's more negative than good in a winning effort. I mean, it's just how we are as Philly fans, right? There's always more bad than good in Philadelphia sports. We're never settled. We're never happy with our teams fully. It's just how it is. There's more negative than good. And I'll tell you what, I think even the Eagles would be the first to tell you this was far, far from their best game. But I'll tell you what, they found a way to win. That's ultimately what's most important, finding a way to win. Never easy to win games in the National Football League. Never easy, especially with the amount of adversity this team's already faced. Dating back to the end of last season, going into week 3, this team's faced adversity already, and they responded. They were able to grind out a win. But let's talk about some of the ugly. And I'm going to start with, I think, the most ugly part of the game. I don't know if I phrased that properly, but the aspect that I was not content with at all was Nick Sirianni and his coaching decisions. He was consistent in his decisions, consistently bad decisions, but he was consistent. That's one of the few pros I can give Nick Sirianni before I go into why I was not very happy with Mr. Sirianni. Ultimately, it was his fourth down decisions were my biggest issues. And before I dive in deeper about Nick Sirianni, what makes it more frustrating is Nick Sirianni already has such a limited role as head coach. He has so much fewer responsibilities compared to most head coaches. Again, doesn't call the offensive plays, doesn't call the defensive plays. His job is to be an organizer and make the key decisions. So when you have very few decisions to make in a game, each decision becomes significantly more important. And if you mess up one of those decisions, as he did multiple times throughout the game, if you mess up one of the few decisions you have to make, it does not leave a good lasting impression. So let's start with the first big mistake, which was deciding to go for it on fourth down with 15 seconds left to go in the first half. Let's break this down. Football for dummies, if you will. The Eagles were about their own 20-yard line, I believe, 30 to 20-yard line, had 14 seconds left in one timeout. They decide to run the tush-push, a play that usually works out pretty well for them. But no, not only do you not run the tush-push on 4th and 1, you run a fake tush-push, the Saints are all over. But let's just say, hypothetically, your decision works. You get the first down. Well, for starters, the tush-push, you have a timeout, but the play still takes a few seconds to develop just because there's bodies flying everywhere. The officials have to clear out the bodies. By the time that play's over, you have one shot. You probably have about 9 seconds to get a touchdown. You get one shot from the 30 to 20-yard line. So much can go wrong. So much can go wrong. Is it really worth only having one shot, by the way, and you're out of timeout, so if you get tackled in bounds, the half's over, you get no points. Is it really worth going for it on fourth down when you're already well into field goal range for one play's worth? By the way, it's not like the game's on the line. It's the second half, and you don't have any points yet. Take the points, Nick. Take the points. I was baffled. Even if they got the first down, the chances of them scoring the next play were so minimal where it's not worth the risk. It's not worth the risk at all. If you're inside the 10 or even the 15, sure. You can make a valid argument, okay, there's more plays in our playbook that we can run to get 10 to 15 yards to get a touchdown. 20 to 30 yards, playbook becomes much more limited, much easier to defend. Take the points. You instead run a fake tush push, you get stuffed, and you end up with 0 points. But let's backtrack, because that wasn't even the first bad decision you made. Opening drive, or excuse me, this was the second bad decision. I have this backwards. Opening drive out of the half, right after you made that bad decision. So you don't get the field goal going into the half. So you come out of the half trying to regroup. Okay, we got to regroup. You make the same mistake again. 4th and 3, well in the field goal range. Again, still have not scored to this point. You go for on 4th down again. Hurts gets sacked. Another terrible decision. So at this point, you think Nick Sirianni learns his lesson. Okay, we're going to take our points. We'll take our points if we're in field goal range. Let's define field goal range, because that leads us to our third poor decision of this game. Our third poor decision of this game. The third poor decision of this game was actually deciding to kick a field goal. And you're going to think I sound like a hypocrite at first, saying, well, you just said don't kick the field goal, so now you're telling us to kick the field goal. What do you want Nick to do? It was a 60-yard field goal. And at that point, the Eagles actually scored a touchdown. They had the lead. So 60-yard field goal, that would put the Eagles on the wrong side of the 50 if it's no good. The Saints are already knocking on the door of being in field goal range. Yet he decides to go for a 60-yard field goal with Jake Elliott in a situation where we already have the lead, and also in a situation where your defense has been electric all game long. You could pin the Saints back and make them drive, more likely than not, 90-plus yards, and score a touchdown when the defense has done absolutely nothing all game long. But instead, you kick a 60-yard field goal, don't get it, give the Saints great fielding position, and I'm pretty sure, looking at my notes here again, missed field goal, yes, and the Saints end up scoring a touchdown on the short field. We won that game in spite of Nick Sirianni is the point I'm ultimately getting at here. We won that game in spite of Nick Sirianni. I know the season's young, but his name was already on the hot seat going into this year. And if he doesn't get better, I will be surprised if he's the head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles next year. This team has high aspirations. Very high aspirations. I don't want to necessarily say it's Super Bowl or bust for his job. I think it's NFC Championship or bust with this squad for his job's sake. And if he keeps making decisions like this, his team will not be seeing an NFC Championship, let alone a Super Bowl championship. So that was the first part of the bad, as I'm quoting it, the bad, here on WSYC 88.7 Shippensburg, PA. But the bad part too. Jalen Hurts still has a turnover problem. It was a problem last year. The Super Bowl year, he was fine with it, but ever since the Super Bowl, he has just been a turnover machine. And all we saw out of training camp was that he's figured it out. He's not turning it over. I heard all throughout training camp that he's gone the whole preseason up until like the last day of camp without turning the ball over once. Everyone was praising his ball security. I'm not really seeing it so far, Jalen. Second in the NFL in turnovers right now, only behind Anthony Richardson. The difference, though, between Anthony Richardson and Jalen Hurts is one is still on his rookie deal. The other is making $255 million. When you get the bag, when you've shown you've had success before, the expectations rise. The two turnovers for Jalen Hurts in the game, the first one, which was by far the worst of the two, was the interception in the red zone in the first half. Eagles were driving, were knocking on the door from scoring. Jalen Hurts throws a red zone interception. Just cannot happen. Red zone turnovers cannot happen. You at the very least, you take the incompletion. Worst comes to worst, you get 3 points. You don't want 0 when you're in the red zone. And he knows that. He doesn't need to be told that. But he needs to be better holding on to the ball. And then the second one was kind of mind-boggling. He fumbles at midfield on a shoestring tackle. The defender, he was rolling out to his left, which is his weaker side, but the defender grabs him and brings him down by his ankles on a clean tackle, a shoestring tackle. And he somehow fumbles the ball. Again, defender not making a play on any of his upper part of his body. It was a shoestring tackle, and he just fumbles the ball. It was kind of baffling how he managed to cough the ball up on that one. Luckily, the rest of the game, he took care of the football, and the Eagles were able to get the job done. But it's it's a little concerning. Something to keep an eye on in the coming weeks if Jalen can hold on to the football. Hopefully he can go a few games in a row without turning the football over. That'd be a great sign. Then the last part of the bad, the injuries. And this one's not really up to the Eagles. This is just the nature of football. But they lost a couple of key players during this game. Obviously, I alluded to it at the beginning of the show. Devontae Smith went down on a very ugly play. It was kind of cringeworthy to watch. But he went down. He's in concussion protocol. I'll be shocked if he plays next week. I think typically I was reading a tweet by Adam Schefter, who's on the Pat McAfee show today. He said typically in these situations with concussions, Usually by the time the results get in, it's almost game time. They usually just put them out at least 1 week to play it safe, and they go from there. So I'd be shocked to see Devontae Smith Sunday. Then Lane Johnson was also ruled out with a concussion. He's in concussion protocol. So Devontae Smith, Lane Johnson, two of the most valuable players on offense, out with concussions. And then Brennan Covey and Darius Slay also both suffered injuries and were out temporarily during the game. But both of those seem to be on the smaller side in terms of significance. I think both of them will be back. But Devontae Smith, Lane Johnson, two big losses, especially considering A.J. Brown's still on the shelf. So what once was the best receiving core in the NFL is now one of the weakest. No Devontae Smith, no A.J. Brown. That leaves two main people on offense who have to carry the load. Dallas Goedert, Saquon Barkley. Run the ball all you can until they stop it. Excuse me. Run the ball all you can until they stop it. And once they do stop it, feed Dallas Goedert. And to Kellen Moore and Nick Sirianni and the Eagles' credit, they did just that. Dallas Goedert had his best game as a pro last Sunday. 10 catches, 170 yards, no touchdowns, almost had a touchdown, but got tackled inside the 10-yard line. Dallas Goedert, keep feeding him. Saquon Barkley, keep running it with him. I think the Eagles can get by until they start recouping some of these lost assets. I want to talk about one more thing about the Eagles, and we'll take a quick break. Actually, we'll take a quick break first. When we come back, I have another audio clip I want to play for you. It's the locker room reaction to the victory. Hear from Nick Sirianni, hear from Reed Blankenship. We'll have that in 60 seconds. You're listening to The Designated Speaker with JD Dorazio on WSYC 88.7 Shippensburg, PA. We'll be back here momentarily. Welcome back to WSYC 88.7. We serve your community here at Shippensburg, PA. I'm JD Dorazio, the host of The Designated Speaker, talking about the Eagles on this Monday recap. We're going to be talking about the Phillies here a little bit later in the show, but for now, before we transition into talking about the Phillies, which I do have a fair amount I want to talk about, I want to play a locker room clip that the Eagles posted on Twitter and just kind of break this down. I thought it was an interesting clip. There are some censored parts in the clip. I made sure to edit that out, but there's still a lot we can break down within this clip. Let's see how the Eagles locker room reacted moments after defeating the New Orleans Saints. You're going to hear the voice of Nick Sirianni. Then the second voice you will hear will be Reed Blankenship, who had the game-winning interception.
When one phase isn't working, the other one has the other one's back. I'm so proud of you. That's how you respond. That's how you respond. That's a response. Nobody had any doubt when we were coming here. The defense. Man. Love the hell out of y'all. We came in here, we dominated. Yes, sir. I want to ride and die with this team. Yes, sir. All we need is best people in this room, and that's it.
So the Eagles are obviously fired up. Reed Blankenship, Nick Sirianni fired up. And I'll tell you what, I'm not the biggest supporter of Nick Sirianni, but even that kind of got me ready to run through a brick wall. That's the stuff he's good at. Bringing together a locker room, motivating the players, and I know this was just an audio clip, but you could see Jalen Hurts in the background, ear to ear smiling. I mean, just loving it. And that was very telling because Jalen Hurts, naturally a very reserved person, doesn't really show a lot of emotion. I know he kind of gets clowned for it online, but doesn't really show a lot of emotion. If you watch that video, which it's on the Eagles Twitter and it's on 94.1 WIP, it's a sports radio station, Philadelphia. It's on both of their Twitters if you want to see the visual component. But Jalen Hurts in the background smiling from ear to ear. And how about Reed Blankenship, man? Not really known for being a leader of this team. Look at him taking over the locker room. Firing everybody up. I mean, that's awesome. That's the stuff you want to see in a locker room. This is a group that is tightly knitted together, and they love each other. And that's a very important aspect to have in a locker room. It is. I love to see it. It was a great video, brought a smile to my face. Just hope that we can clean it up and just play a complete brand of Eagles football. We have not seen the Eagles play a complete game through the first 3 weeks. Against the Packers, just very sloppy. In a foreign country, it was week 1, so I'll give them the pass there. Week 2, obviously, the defensive collapse at the end. Then week 3, an offensive collapse, but the defense did enough to get the job done. So hopefully in week 4 against a Tampa Bay Buccaneers team who just lost to the Broncos, but all things considered, still one of the better teams in the National Football League. Hopefully the Eagles can play a better game and hopefully get some playoff revenge as well. Because if you remember from last year, the Buccaneers eliminated the Eagles from playoff contention. So that's it on the Eagles I have for this show. And for the last 14 minutes or so, I want to talk about the Philadelphia Phillies, who are set to start their last homestand of the year against the Chicago Cubs in approximately 14 minutes. And last week on the show, I was talking about how at this time right now, I want to be waving a flag. I wanted to be celebrating the division trophy or the division crown, whatever you want to call it. And we're not there yet. We're one win away from the division. And I really thought they were going to do it against the New York Mets. It would have been so good to do it against the New York Mets. But they did not do it. They dropped 3 out of 4, which was enough to clinch a playoff spot. Still need one more win to win the division. I want to talk about that series against the Mets, though, because it was a really frustrating series, other than the one win, of course. That was just an offensive knockout from the Phillies. But I want to talk about the series without necessarily panicking. I'm going to try not to panic. I can't guarantee that I will panic, but I'm going to try not to. I don't want to panic because you're going to drop a series of division rival throughout the season. It's just how it is, and all the games were pretty much very competitive, which is good. It's not like they got blown out except for the Taijuan Walker start, which we'll get to. But man, I really just wanted to see him get the division done and just get it out of the way. I've been a Phillies fan, a diehard Phillies fan since like the mid-2010s, so I didn't get to fully appreciate like the 08, 09, 10, the 11 teams. I was just too young, so I've never really been able to fully appreciate a division title. Ever since I've been a diehard Phillies fan, it's just been the Braves division to win rather easily. I want this so bad. I want this division crown so bad. I want this first round bye so bad, and I'm going to be really upset if they don't get a first round bye. They will get the division. I just know there's no chance they don't. There's no chance they don't. There's no way they collapse that hard. There is still a chance, though, they win the division, but the Brewers pass them. And that just cannot happen. It cannot happen. And it all starts tonight. And I was thinking about this earlier. How poetic would it be for Aaron Nola to be the guy that gives the Phillies the division win? The guy that's been the longest tenured Philly. He's been here through all the rebuilding years. How amazing would it be for him to be the guy at home to start and be one of the key components of why the Phillies win the division? I think it would be beautiful. Aaron Nola's been with us forever. He's seen the good, the bad, the highs and lows. It would be so awesome for him to do it tonight in 11 minutes now when the game starts to get the job done. And I think they're going to. I know I had a good feeling yesterday with Wheeler on the mound. I have an even better feeling tonight with Nola on the mound just because we're back at home. Everybody, the bank's going to be rocking. Everybody in that crowd wants to see a celebration. I want to see the champagne popped. I want to hear Dancing on My Own if they decide to bring it back. I don't know if they will. I want another Philly celebration. I need that injected into my veins. I just need it. But let's talk about the Mets series before I look ahead to the Cubs series. Let's start with Game 1, where I'm still questioning the decision to put Taijuan Walker back on the mound. Colby Allard was doing just fine as the fifth starter. Wasn't pitching the lights out or anything, but he was getting the job done. I think the Phillies were over 500 in games that he started. Maybe they were 500 even. But still, that's better than what Taijuan Walker has given you. I don't understand why he got put back in the rotation. I don't know if he's going to start again. I mean, at this point, he probably will because he's getting opportunity after opportunity after opportunity. He probably will be starting again for all we know, but there's no way, unless if it's just as an innings eater, he sees the field in the postseason. The only way he sees the field come postseason is if the Phillies are getting dominated in a game. And they just punt it and don't want to waste their pitching. But I don't see that happening. You rarely see major blowouts in the postseason. Other than that, though, I was actually very happy with the pitching throughout the Mets series. Christopher Sanchez looked good. Zach Wheeler looked phenomenal last night. It's a shame the Phillies blew that start. And Ranger Suarez had a good bounce-back start. We had a lot of questions about Ranger. He got through 5 innings, 2 earned runs. You'll take that. Very impressed by the pitching and the bullpen work. Everyone looked good. It was just on the offense. It really was. This offense just continues to be entirely hot or entirely cold. There's no middle ground. Either all 9 of them are hitting or all 9 of them are striking out. And I saw a lot of strikeouts in that Mets series. They struggle to when the bats are cold, they're struggling to put the ball in play. They're chasing at the high fastball, and they're swinging at curveballs in the dirt. Just got to tighten up the zone, and we'll be good. Now, again, granted, they also hit a lot of baseballs well, but right to people in the Mets series. There was a couple home run balls that were just feet short on the warning track. So I'll take that. I'll accept that. But let's just have a tighter zone, and let's just get the ball back in play. When this team puts the ball in play, good things happen. Just the amount of raw star power. If these guys just put the ball in play, good things will happen. I just cannot afford for the bats to go cold. They're not fully cold right now. They're like lukewarm. But if they have a bad showing against the Cubs, I would say the bats are officially cold again. So let's not have the bats go cold. This is not the time of year for the bats to go cold. We're about to enter the postseason. Let's enter the postseason with some momentum, with some good wins over the Cubs. Let's get a division title tonight. Can we do that for me, please? I need the division title tonight, please, guys. And I think they will do it. I think they will perform against the Cubs. I think we get vintage Nola tonight. We're going to get this way off our shoulders. We're going to claim the division title. I believe. October's coming. We already clinched the playoff spot. It's coming whether you're ready for it or not. Are we going to be dancing on our own again? I don't know. I don't know if they're going to bring it back. I'm going to make sure I post a clip of this to my social media channels and comment down below. I know you can't comment now live, but when I post this, comment down below. Do you want Dancing on My Own to come back? Because here's my take, and I'll end the show with this, just like a fun little side thing to end the show with. Dancing on My Own has not yielded the results, and I didn't want it to come back last year. But I mean, come on! As soon as you hear it the first time, it just grabs you by the heart, pulls you by the drawstrings, and you just fall in love with it again. And that's exactly how I feel. In the moment, I'm like, oh no, it's a second place song. They can't bring it back. It's never worked for them. But man, if they blast that song once, it's going to pull me by the heartstrings again. I'll be singing it once again. I keep dancing. Oh, man. I'm already falling for it again. I don't know if they'll bring it back. Maybe we need a new song. I don't know. But let's give some reason to celebrate tonight. Let's get out the Ginglings. Let's see Garrett Stubbs in the overalls. Let's hear a Rob Thompson speech. Those just fill my heart with so much joy. I'm ready for it. Phillies, Cubs, underway in 6 minutes, looking to claim the division crown. We got 5 minutes left in the show. We're just going to go through what went down during the rest of Week 3. Well, actually, before we do that, let's talk about the 2 games that also are tonight in the football world. The good old ESPN doubleheader on Monday Night Football. I love when ESPN does this. Granted, I won't be watching much of these games, but I'll at the very least follow the highlights and whatnot. We got Jaguars-Bills and Commanders-Bengals. Jaguars-Bills, an interesting one. Jaguars looking to avoid starting the season 0-3 against the red-hot Buffalo Bills at home. And I don't see the Jaguars advancing to 1-2. I think the Jaguars start 0-3, just have not been impressed by Trevor Lawrence. And Josh Allen and his new Bills, despite losing a lot of additions, maybe it's more addition by subtraction. They've looked better. They've looked this has been as good of a start to the year as I've seen from them in a while. We'll see if they can keep it up. But Bills-Jags tonight, I have the Bills winning that one. I think it'll still be relatively competitive. That is underway at 7:30. The second game, Commanders at the Bengals, another intriguing matchup. Bengals are also winless, looking to avoid going 0-3. And very curious to see what we see from the Commanders, the Eagles' division rival. They actually look like they have some promise this year. Jane Daniels looks like a great young prospect for them. Don't be surprised this game's close. It's one of the bigger spreads of the week. They have Cincinnati winning by 7 as the spread. But don't be surprised this game's close. Don't be surprised if Washington somehow wins this game. I don't think they will. I'm going to take Cincinnati to win this one, but I think it's going to be a lot closer than people expect. So those are the two games tonight on ESPN for Monday Night Football. Jags, Bills, Commanders, Bengals. Then if we recap any of the top storylines from Week 3, look at the Vikings beating the Texans, 34-7. Sam Darnold having a day. Maybe the Vikings are legit. Maybe Sam Darnold finally found his team. I mean, he came out of USC with such great potential. Never really panned out as the Jets. Had an okay start with Carolina. But since then, he's just kind of been a backup. But now, gets a shot after the JJ McCarthy injury and has done nothing but make the most of it. Absolutely blows out the Texans, who most people are high on, in a 34-7 rout. Seahawks beat the Dolphins 24-3 without Tua. That team, the Dolphins, are just in shambles. Ravens beat the Cowboys 25-28, which was a really entertaining primetime game on Fox. Cowboys have a 19-point fourth quarter to try to make it interesting, but Ravens are able to hold on. The 49ers lose 27-24. They're 1-2 now. The Rams advance to 1-2. It's been a weird start to the NFL year. It's been a really weird start. Then the Sunday night game, Chiefs defeat the Falcons 22-17. Some questionable calls at the end of the game. A lot of people were saying Kyle Pitts should have been called for a pass interference that would have set the Falcons up first and goal to 1. No penalty called. The Chiefs survive in Atlanta. But watch out for the Falcons. They're going to be good. They're going to be good. They proved themselves obviously against the Eagles. They won. Against the Chiefs, who are unanimously the best team in the NFL. I mean, they gave them a run for their money. So watch out for the Falcons. But it was a really weird week 3 in the NFL. Giants beat the Browns. Steelers are 3-0 again somehow. Broncos defeating the Buccaneers. The Panthers with Andy Dalton are looking amazing. It was a really weird week in the NFL. A really bizarre week. But that's why you watch the game. That's why you watch sports. I thank you guys so much for taking the time to chat with me, for listening in to the Designated Speaker on WSYC 88.7 FM, Shippensburg, PA. Happy to have you here. We'll be back at the same time next week at 6 p.m. to do it all over again. And if you listen to me on YouTube, if and when, because they will, knock on wood, I might even record a special podcast just on the YouTube to talk about the Phillies if and when they clinch the division. So maybe keep an eye on that for that on the YouTube. It's just JD Dorazio. Search my name. If you want to follow me on Instagram, where I'll be posting daily clips throughout the week, you can check that out at JD Dorazio Sports. And then if Instagram's not really your thing, you like the TikTok side of things, you can also check me on TikTok also at JD Dorazio Sports. I'll be posting clips all throughout the week. That's going to do it as the clock is about to strike 6:40. Phillies Cubs about to get underway. Let's go win a division, baby. Birds, let's go defeat the Buccaneers. I hope you guys have a great rest of your sports week. We'll catch you same time on the radio station, on the YouTube, Monday at 6 p.m. The Designated Speaker at JD Dorazio. I'll see you later for this time, but hope to see you again soon. Take it easy, y'all.